At 14,830 feet over Portland, a Boeing 737 MAX 9 lost a piece of its own fuselage in midair. The hole was the shape of a door. 4 bolts were missing. No one died on that flight. 171 passengers and 6 crew members landed alive. But the missing bolts were not the start of the story. They were the latest entry in a 20-year ledger. That ledger had already killed 346 people on 2 earlier 737 MAX flights, wiped $40 billion from Boeing's market cap in a single month, and forced the company to spend $8.3 billion to undo a single decision its own CEO made back in 2005. That CEO was a man named Harry Stonecipher. The decision was to sell Boeing's own bones to private equity for $900 million. The 20-year ledger is the subject of this video. In June of 2005, Boeing closed a deal that looked on paper like elegant financial engineering. The buyer was Onex Corporation, a Canadian private equity firm. Boeing's Wichita division, the factory complex that built the fuselage for every 737 the company sold, changed hands for $900 million in cash, plus the assumption of debt. The logic was straightforward and popular at the time. Selling the factory meant removing the fixed assets from Boeing's balance sheet, which made the company's return on net assets look dramatically better to Wall Street. The same productive capacity was still there. It was just no longer Boeing's problem to own. The factory was renamed Spirit AeroSystems. Of the 9,500 Boeing employees who worked there, 1,100 were cut. The machinist union accepted a 10% pay cut to keep their jobs. The strategic center of gravity for 737 manufacturing was now a private equity portfolio company run by people whose job was to extract returns for limited partners, not to build the safest narrow-body aircraft in the world. 5 years later, the second domino fell in Toulouse. Airbus announced the A320neo in December of 2010. A re-engined version of its narrow-body competitor that promised double-digit fuel savings without a clean-sheet redesign. The following summer, American Airlines, a Boeing-only customer for decades, ordered 130 A320neos. The signal Boeing's board read in that order was simple: the monopoly was over unless they responded immediately. A clean-sheet aircraft would have cost somewhere between $10 and $20 billion and taken a decade. So in August of 2011, the board approved the 737 MAX, a re-engine of a 50-year-old airframe. The new LEAP engines were physically larger. They had to be mounted higher and further forward on the wing than the engines they replaced. That single geometric change introduced an aerodynamic pitch-up tendency at extreme angles of attack. The nose of the aircraft wanted to rise in certain conditions in a way the original 737 had never done. Boeing's engineers had 2 options. They could redesign the aerodynamics with hardware, which would have triggered a full recertification and a multi-year delay, or they could mask the behavior with software. They chose software. They called the software MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. The original MCAS was a narrow and conservative piece of code. That is not how it shipped. In the middle of 2016, during flight testing, Boeing's test pilots discovered that the pitch-up tendency was not limited to extreme angles of attack. It also showed up at low speeds, in the normal flight envelope, where every commercial flight spends part of its time. The original MCAS, designed for an edge case, was now needed in conditions pilots would actually encounter on a routine basis. Boeing's engineers made 3 changes simultaneously, and they made them quietly. First, they expanded MCAS's stabilizer authority from 0.6 degrees to 2.5 degrees, more than 4 times the original limit. 2.5 degrees of stabilizer movement translates to roughly 40 to 50 pounds of nose-down force on the pilot's control column. Second, they removed the second trigger condition. The original MCAS required both a high angle of attack reading and a high G-force loading. The revised MCAS removed the G-force requirement entirely and would now activate on a single sensor signal alone. Third, they kept the system running off a single angle of attack sensor, not a comparison between the 2 sensors the aircraft already had on board. None of these changes triggered a new FAA safety review. Boeing classified the failure mode of low-speed MCAS as major rather than catastrophic, which under the FAA's certification rules meant the single sensor design was permitted. Boeing's internal safety analysis then calculated the probability of a hazardous MCAS malfunction at approximately 1 in 223 trillion flight hours, an estimate that did not consider the possibility that MCAS could activate repeatedly in a single flight. Both of the aircraft that eventually crashed experienced multiple MCAS activations in sequence. And then there was the manual. Boeing's chief technical pilot, a man named Mark Faulkner, suggested to the FAA that MCAS not appear in the pilot manuals at all. The FAA approved a 1-hour iPad transition course for pilots moving from the previous 737 generation to the MAX, and that course made no mention of MCAS. According to a former Boeing engineer named Rick Ludke, the financial reason for keeping the training light was a rebate clause in Southwest Airlines' purchase contract. If simulator training was required, Boeing owed Southwest roughly $1 million per aircraft. With 3,000 orders on the books, the simulator training trigger alone was a multi-billion-dollar exposure. Meanwhile, the operational pressure on Spirit AeroSystems was multiplying. In October of 2014, Boeing publicly announced a production target of 52 737s per month by 2018, up from the mid-30s. That announcement cascaded directly to Wichita. Spirit had to deliver more fuselages, faster with the same workforce, under the same private equity cost discipline that had defined the spinoff. Quality inspectors began finding hundreds of defects per day. Misdrilled holes, missing fasteners, foreign object debris left inside structural cavities, dented skins. Spirit management responded the way cost-pressured operations always respond. They threw pizza parties to celebrate lower defect counts. The defect counts dropped because the defects stopped being reported. By 2018, Spirit's quality output was so unreliable that Boeing placed the company on formal probation. From 2018 through 2021, no Spirit-built fuselage shipped to Renton without a Boeing manager's sign-off. The financial logic of the 2005 spinoff was now requiring an entirely new layer of overhead just to make the supply chain functional again. Boeing was rebuilding inside its own building what it had paid Onyx $900 million to take off its books. On October 29th of 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 departed Jakarta. A faulty angle of attack sensor on the captain's side fed bad data into MCAS. The system pushed the nose down, the pilots pulled back, and the system pushed the nose down again. This sequence repeated 11 times. On the 12th activation, the aircraft entered an unrecoverable dive. 189 people died. Boeing's initial response was to issue a bulletin. For most line pilots flying the 737 MAX, that bulletin was the first time they learned MCAS existed. Boeing's public framing emphasized pilot training and foreign carrier procedures, and the framing held for 4 months. On March 10th of 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 went down 6 minutes after takeoff from Addis Ababa. Same aircraft type, same failure mode. 157 people died. 3 days later, the FAA grounded every 737 MAX in commercial service. 387 aircraft across 59 airlines operating roughly 8,600 weekly flights were halted at once. The grounding lasted 20 months. Boeing halted production of the MAX entirely in January of 2020. The direct cost of the crisis came to $20 billion, and the indirect cost from lost orders, delayed deliveries, and supplier impairment exceeded $60 billion. Boeing's market cap dropped by $40 billion in a single month. The stock fell from $446 to $129 over the course of the following year, a 71% decline, peak to trough. In January of 2021, Boeing signed a deferred prosecution agreement with the Department of Justice. The total settlement was $2.5 billion. That figure broke down into a criminal penalty of $243 million, $1.77 billion in compensation to airline customers, and a $500 million fund for the families of crash victims. Boeing admitted to conspiracy to defraud the FAA, and the deal was conditional on 3 years of compliance. On January 5th of 2024, 3 years and 1 day after the DPA was signed, Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 lost the door plug that opens this video. The fuselage, designated Unit 8789, had arrived at Boeing's Renton facility in late August of 2023. Spirit's inspectors had installed 5 rivets incorrectly. Those rivets were painted over without being reworked. Boeing's own inspectors caught them on September 7th. Spirit sent contractors to fix the rivets under warranty on September 18th and 19th, and to give them access, Boeing's crew opened the door plug. Then no one documented whether the 4 critical bolts that hold the door plug in place against pressurization were ever reinstalled. 127 days later, at 14,830 feet, they were not. The FAA conducted a 6-week production audit in early 2024. Boeing failed 33 out of 89 product audits, with 97 instances of non-compliance. Spirit failed 7 out of 13. In May of that year, the DOJ formally notified the court that Boeing had breached the terms of its deferred prosecution agreement. Around the same time, a Spirit quality auditor named Joshua Dean, who had been giving depositions in a shareholder lawsuit alleging concealed defects, died from a sudden bacterial infection. He was 35 years old. The chain runs forward in a single direction. In 2005, the decision to spin off Wichita put manufacturing into a cost extraction structure with no engineering culture to slow it down. In 2014, the decision to push 52 fuselages a month put that structure under a load it could not carry without hiding defects. In 2016, the same cost over quality logic that had broken Spirit's quality reporting also produced the MCAS revision. That revision quadrupled stabilizer authority, removed a redundancy trigger, ran off a single sensor, and stayed out of pilot manuals to avoid a $1 million per plane training rebate. The crashes were the outcome. The defects were the outcome. A door plug at 14,000 feet was the outcome. The financial logic behind each of those outcomes was the same financial logic. Boeing's CEO during the worst of the crisis, Dave Calhoun, was asked in 2024 whether the company had pushed outsourcing too far. His answer on the record was, "Did it go too far? Yeah, probably did." That sentence is the most accurate summary anyone associated with Boeing has offered. In December of 2025, Boeing closed its reacquisition of Spirit AeroSystems. The deal was structured as $4.7 billion in equity, plus assumption of Spirit's outstanding debt, for a total enterprise value of $8.3 billion. A factory Boeing had sold to Onex for $900 million in 2005 came back inside the company at roughly 9 times the original sale price, after 20 years of crisis costs that ran past $80 billion. The bolts on Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 were one entry in that ledger. Lion Air 610 and Ethiopian 302 were earlier entries. The original entry, the one that made every subsequent entry possible, was a press release issued in June of 2005. Boeing was founded in 1916. For its first 89 years, it built its own fuselages. For the 20 years after that, it did not. The cost of those 20 years, in cash and in lives, is still being counted.